One of the best ways to start creating new diagrams in Microsoft Visio is start using templates. Templates are available if you click on the File tab and select New. You can find templates among many different categories, for example, network, flowcharts, software, education, business, database, or floor plans. Or you can find template that you need by typing the name of the template that you might be looking for example, UML in my case. And if something that you need is available in the list. If you're unsure which template do you need, you can start with the basic diagram or blank drawing. I'm gonna click on the basic diagram to start my Visio diagram. In your typical Microsoft Visio workflow, you will start by selecting the template. You use Microsoft Visio by using ribbon interface with its tabs, groups, and commands. You access all the shapes that you need through the palette, stencils, and shapes. To start creating the diagram, you just drag the shape into the diagram, and from here you can do multiple things. You can double-click on the shape and add a title to the shape. You can access additional features of the shape by using right mouse click. And as you can see, you can cut, copy, and paste the shapes. You can change features of the font, or you can access shape properties. Most of the commands you need to use Visio are located on the Home tab. In fact, Microsoft claims that 80% of the times you will be spending in the Home tab. On the Home tab, you can access clipboard commands. You can change fonts properties. For example, you can increase the size of the font once shape is selected, or decrease the size of the font. You can realign the font through the paragraph group. You can access to the tools. There are 6 different tools in the tools section. You can access to the shape styles. For example, if you're not happy with the style of the shape, once it's selected, you can change the style of the shape and select the one that you like. One way to add more shapes into the diagram is just to drag another shape and place it next to the first one. You can see that Visio provides grid lines, which allows you to place the shape aligned with the previous shape. This allows you to build professional diagrams very quickly. Once we've added the second shape, we can double-click on it and give it a title. You see that the font sizes are different between the shapes. One cool feature Microsoft Visio provides is to copy format from one shape to another. To do that, you need to use Format Painter. And you use Format Painter by selecting the original shape from which you're trying to copy the format. Clicking Format Painter, clicking on the shape to which you would like to copy the format to. As you have 2 shapes now, you might consider connecting them. You connect the shapes using Connector tool. You select the Connector tool and drag the line from one shape to another. As you can see, now line is selected, and Visio provides shape styles for line. We can change the shape styles by selecting among the available styles. Since there are so many commands in the ribbon, Microsoft Visio provides you ability to find commands you might be looking for with the option Tell Me. For example, even though zoom in and zoom out features are available in the bottom right corner and you can use them, let's say that you don't know where there might be. All you need to do is to go to the Tell Me box and type zoom, and it will show you that there are multiple different zoom options available, and you can zoom specifically based on the percentage that you'd like to zoom or based on the page size. In addition to being able to find specific zoom size, you can also fit the diagram and switch to the presentation mode. Both of these features are located next to the zoom bar. For example, if you're trying to fit it to the window, you click the Fit to the Window button. And if you're trying to switch to the presentation mode, it will remove all ribbons and you will have full screen access to your diagram. To exit the presentation mode, you click the Escape button. Visio allows you to have multiple diagrams inside single VSDX file. You create multiple diagrams by accessing Diagram Tabs feature. When we created blank Visio file, it added one single tab, which is called Page 1. You can rename this tab by double-clicking on it, and I'm gonna give it a name, Vendor Relationship. You can add additional tabs by using this plus sign, or you can duplicate an existing diagram by right mouse clicking on this tab and selecting Duplicate. Clicking plus signs adds new blank diagram into the Visio file versus duplicates previous diagram that you've selected for duplication. Once you're done working on the diagram, you can save it as Visio file or export it as PDF or image. There are multiple different formats available for you. For example, the key ones I use is PDF. You can also export it as video as MP4 file, JPEG, PNG, and TIFF. There are 2 types of process flow diagrams Microsoft Visio supports and provides templates for: basic flowchart and cross-functional flowchart. Basic flowchart allows you to define process flow. versus cross-functional, which is also called Swimlane flowchart, allows you to define process flow, but in addition you define actors in separate swim lanes. And this diagram is extremely helpful to separate roles and responsibilities, specifically for asymmetrics. The best way to create basic flowchart process flow diagram is to use basic flowchart template in Visio. I used it recently, so it shows up in my recently viewed templates. If you don't see it right away, you can search for it using the search bar and select it from the search results. To start creating the diagram, all you need to do is to drag shapes into the diagram and start connecting them. I'm working with Patricia on the marketing project to create a video for our flagman product. We both report to John. Because of the extremely heavy workload, John suggested that we add additional team member into our team. John gave us 5 considerations to build effective hiring process. He suggested that we should first define job description for the position. We should build this job description keeping in mind internal and external candidates. He also suggested that we should define where we're going to advertise open role. And he recommended that we screen resumes for external candidates and talk to the managers for internal candidates. He also suggested that we set upfront rules for the interview and the hiring decision process. Every basic flowchart diagram has a starting and ending point. You use the start shape to define the start of the process, and then add a text start into the shape of the diagram. Rectangular boxes define process shapes. You add the description for the process step into the rectangular box. For example, as John suggested, the first step in every recruitment hiring process should be defined job position description. You add title to the diagram by using the text tool. You select the text tool, select the area, and type the name of the diagram. There are 3 main tools that you most likely will be using and switching between in Microsoft Visio. You use pointer tool to work with shapes. You use connector tool to connect shapes. And you use text tool to add text into the diagram. All 3 tools are located on the Home ribbon tab. And you can see currently selected tool in the tools group on the ribbon. There are 3 major ways how you can add additional shapes onto the diagram. You can drag the shape, and you see Visio has grid lines that allows you to position the shape among the existing shapes to make diagram look professional. Once you've added additional shape and updated the text on the shape, you can connect both shapes using connector tool. You select connector tool and drag the line from one shape to another. You need to switch back to pointer tool to add additional shapes to the diagram. Second major way to add shapes onto the diagram is to select existing shape, use copy, and use paste. You can update the text on the copied shape in a very similar way, and then you can drag the shape to position it at the same distance and along the grid lines with existing shapes. You need to switch to the connector tool to drag the line from the existing shape to the new shape. And the third and probably the most effective way of adding shapes into the diagram is to use the extension tools in Visio that are available for the flowchart diagrams. To see them better, I'm going to zoom in, and then once you hover the shape, you see the extension triangle, which shows all available shapes that you can add and connect from the existing shape. For example, my next step is the decision, whether this is internal or external candidate. To add decision into the flowchart diagram, I need to use diamonds. And as you can see, once I selected the diamond, it added not just the diamond, but also added a connector from the existing shape to the diamond. Typically, the decision on the decision shape is Boolean, yes or no, but sometimes it depends based on the question that you're asking in the decision box. In my case, the hiring process might be different for internal versus external candidates. For internal candidate, I might choose to talk to the manager, and I will represent this step with the action box for the process flow. I may also consider specifying that this is an internal branch in the process flow by selecting and double-clicking on the arrow and adding internal text. For external candidates, my process might be slightly different. I may choose to do initial phone screening to get the initial impression about the candidate and to determine their interest and salary range for the position they're applying for. My next step might be the same for both types of candidates, as I would need to make a decision whether to invite them for the interview. Considering the circumstances, one of the best ways to represent this step might be to copy an existing shape and paste it as a new shape. Once I rename this shape, I can position it along with other shapes and connect it from both internal candidate as well as external candidate as I would need to make a decision whether to invite them for the interview. If you've noticed that something is missing, for example, external branch is missing, on the arrow, you can just double-click on the arrow and add the text. Sometimes you may also realize that you connected arrows to the wrong places on the box. For example, decision box typically has one input and at least two outputs. And it might be hard for me to represent the output from this decision without crossing the lines. So I might consider changing the input lines to the left input place in the diamond shape. To do that, I would need to select the line and drag the endpoint of the line and connect it to a different input point. I can also consider doing the same thing for another line. Now I will be able to show both positive and negative decision outputs right on the diagram. For example, for negative decision, I might choose to send an email, and I'll show this as a process flow step with the appropriate text. I can send either email or regular mail letter, and you would want to separate actions with some sort of separator. And I chose to use slash, but you can use something else on your diagram. To show that this is a negative decision, you might want to add no to the arrow that is output from the decision-making process. If you choose to invite candidate to the interview, you may consider showing this as a process step in the diagram. The process step might have a name in-person interview, or you might consider reflecting that this also might be a Zoom meeting because of the COVID-19. After conducting the interview, you may need to make a decision. If you choose to hire a candidate, you might consider communicating this information to the candidate in the form of letter of offer, and you would need to reflect it with the yes flow on the diagram. If you choose not to hire a candidate, your process might reflect sending a rejection letter to the candidate, and you reflect it with the connector, connecting it to the send rejection email process step. And you might highlight this branch as the no branch on the diagram. As usual, if you notice that branches are missing, for example, in my case, invite for the interview is missing the yes text on the arrow, you can always add it by editing the arrow in the diagram. Communicating offer to the candidate concludes this process flow and can be reflected with the and symbol on the diagram. In a similar way, sending rejection email also concludes the process flow and could be concluded with the same symbol. Keep in mind that process flow can only have one starting point, but can have multiple endpoints. The easiest way to start building Swimlane diagram in Microsoft Visio is to find Swimlane template. Template comes with the title area as well as the two swim lanes. To assign your own title to the diagram based on what you're trying to build, you double-click on the title and type the new name. You assign names to the swim lanes in the same way by double-clicking the name of the swim lane and typing the new name. You draw the diagram by dragging the shapes from the Stencils area in Microsoft Visio onto the diagram. Every swim lane diagram typically has a starting point, and for our particular process of purchase order approval process, the requester will be gathering details for the purchase order and creating purchase order approval request. Microsoft Visio provides you 3 different ways to add shapes to the diagram. You can drag shapes from the Stencils area right onto the diagram. Once shape is in place, you can double-click on the shape and add the required text. To connect the shapes, you need to switch to Connector tool and draw the line in between the shapes. Second way of adding shapes onto Swimlane diagram is by copying shape and pasting it. You can update the text on the shape in the same way by double-clicking on the shape and replacing existing text with the new text. When you drag this shape, Visio provides grid lines so you can place the shape along with other shapes on the same diagram. And you draw the line between the shapes by switching to Connector mode and drawing the line. The third way of adding the shape is the easiest because it allows you to add the shape and connect the line in the same step. To do that, you use triangles at the end of the shape and pick the next step from the list of available shapes, and as a last step, type the text by double-clicking on the shape and typing the text. As you can see, by using the third method, we've accomplished multiple objectives. We created new shape, new line was automatically added, and shape was placed along with other shapes to make the diagram look very professional. There are 3 main scenarios when you might consider using cross-functional swimlane diagram. The first scenario is when you need to define specific actors. You need to specifically outline who is doing what in the process. Second scenario is when you need to define specific roles and responsibilities. And the third scenario is combination of the first two, as organizations frequently use RACI matrix to define who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed in the process flow. Typically, after order is created in the system, direct supervisor or manager need to approve the acquisition. To do that, we need to show this as a step in another swim lane. Because this is a decision step, we need to show it with the diamond shape, but I already put in the rectangular shape, which shows the process. In fact, I did it on purpose to demonstrate you another cool capability of Microsoft Visio of changing the shapes. You do it by navigating to the home ribbon and choosing the Change Shape button, where you can pick the shape and replace one shape with another shape. You type the text in the diamond shape the same way as you would do in a regular shape. Typically, for the decision shape, there is one input and multiple outputs. One output might be when manager doesn't approve the request. We need to show it with the N shape. And to show the branch of not approving, we double-click on the line and type the text. If manager approves the request, it needs to go to procurement department for processing. As you can see, we don't have a procurement department swim lane, and we can edit in multiple ways. One way is to drag the swim lane from the Stencils box directly onto the diagram, and then snap it right into existing diagram. Another, and I think much easier way, is to select an existing swim lane, right mouse click, and say Insert Swim Lane after. To give diagram a title, you double-click on the existing title and type the new name. Typically, procurement department starts their process by requesting quotes from multiple vendors. To reflect this, we need to add a process step in the procurement swim lane. Then add a title to the process box, and then connect shapes using connector. We also would like to make sure to reflect that this happens after manager approves the original request. Procurement department is typically also responsible for selecting the vendor. They do it as another process step in the diagram, and we can reflect it as a separate shape in procurement swim lane. As you might have noticed, I was frequently switching between pointer tool and connector tool in Microsoft Visio. These tools are among 3 most used tools in Microsoft Visio application. In addition to pointer and connector tool, there is also a text tool, and all 3 of them are located in the Tools section of the ribbon. You use pointer tool to position the shapes. With the pointer tool, you can drag the shape, you can resize the shape, and you can access properties of the shape. Using connector tool, you can connect shapes by dragging the line and connecting the 2 shapes. You need to switch back to the pointer tool to delete the line. And you delete the line by selecting the line and clicking Cut, or using Delete button on the keyboard. The text tool allows you to bring in text into the diagram. When you select the text tool, you position the cursor and you start typing. To delete the text, you need to switch back to the pointer tool. Select the text and either use Cut or Delete button on the keyboard. Once vendor is selected, procurement department is also responsible to update original order with how they've made a decision and which vendors they have contacted. And as a next step, they are in charge to request approval from CFO, Chief Financial Officer. I want to pinpoint that what just happened is very cool. We've added a shape that originally didn't fit into the diagram, but Microsoft Visio expanded swim lanes automatically to fit the shape, and it will continue to do it as you add additional shapes. We do have additional swim lane for CFO, Chief Financial Officer, but we do not have it named correctly. So we need to go back and give it the right name. If you are like me and trying to avoid usage of the acronyms, you might want to consider adding the full name of the Chief Financial Officer right into the swim lane. After receiving the purchase order with all the required information, Chief Financial Officer needs to make a decision whether this is the right thing to do for the organization to acquire these goods or services. If Chief Financial Officer decides not to proceed with this acquisition, the process ends. But if CFO decides to proceed, it goes back to the procurement team, and procurement team sends details of the purchase order to the vendor. What's interesting, when I expanded to the next step using embedded features of the Visio, it created a box in CFO swim lane. But this process step is not done by CFO, but rather is done by procurement team. To reflect that, we just need to drag the shape and place it right in the procurement swim lane. We can also change the way arrow is connected. Instead of connecting from the left, we can connect the arrow from the bottom. I did this by dragging the end of the arrow from one spot to another. We also might want to reflect that this step happens only if CFO approves original purchase order. Next step in the process goes back to the original requester, where requester needs to work with the vendor to receive goods or services. By default, box was added into the manager swim lane, but we need to drag the box back into the requester swim lane and position it along the grid lines Microsoft Visio provides. This step concludes the process, which should be reflected by the and symbol in the swim lane diagram. Diagram we have developed looks okay, but kind of plain. We can do a few things to make it look more professional and better meet our needs. One thing I would recommend you do first is to navigate to Design tab and try different design themes. Microsoft Visio provides a lot of different design themes, and you can pick based on your company's logo or based on some other criteria that are important to you. I like this theme, which is called linear, but your preferences obviously might be different. Once you select the theme, you can pick the variant based off of the theme. Variant leaves the fonts, sizes, main ideas of the theme in place, but allows you to pick different colors. I like the second variant as it provides calmer colors. Few things I'd like to pinpoint as we change the theme. For example, you see that the start shape, as well as diamonds for the decision making, got painted in a different color. I believe this is a good thing because it highlights the importance of the start and end points, as well as it highlights the importance of the decision-making diamonds. In addition to changing the theme, Visio provides you a quick opportunity to change the background. You can upload your own image or select from the pre-built images for the background. You might have noticed that because we're using cross-functional flowchart template from Microsoft, Visio added an additional tab which is specific to just this particular type of diagram. If you navigate to this tab, you can do a lot of different things. For example, you can show or hide separators in between the diagram and the swim lanes. You can show or hide title bar. You can choose different styles for your diagram, specific to swim lane type diagram. You can also arrange your shapes differently by changing the margins on the diagram. You can also change the direction of the flow with one click, from left to right to left. And you can also change the orientation of the diagram from horizontal to vertical with just one click. I'm going to stick with the original type of diagram and just click the undo button. There are also some additional options available to insert swim lane, separators, or new page, and I would recommend you explore them on your own. To start creating UML diagram, just click on the UML use case template. There are 8 shapes available to create UML use case diagram: actor, use case, subsystem, associations, dependency, generalization, include and extend. Let's look at 5 main considerations for online e-commerce store. There are at least 2 types of online customers. Both new customers and previously registered customers can shop at online store. Customers should be able to search, view, and find the items to make purchases. Customers should be able to complete checkout, and new customers should be able to sign up. There are 2 types of online customers: previously registered customers and new customers. First, let's depict online customer. You can either bring a new actor icon for every new customer type, or you can just copy and paste an existing actor's icon. So what is UML? UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. It is the visual language that was designed to help capture ideas and make communication of the information easier among software development teams. UML provides multiple types of diagrams to help describe software systems. It helps people visualize concepts, construct systems, and document actors. It helps with business modeling of the new system, as it helps people to get aligned on the idea and help everybody to better understand what is being built and help contribute to final solution. The relationship between customer types could be described in UML using generalization. To describe the relationship, you bring in the generalization line and now customize it based on the need. To show online shopping store, you use UML subsystem shape. After we change the name of the shape, we can start adding use cases using use case shape. There are at least 4 different use cases we should consider: search and view, make purchases, checkout, and sign up for new customers. So what is UML use cases diagram? The main purpose of UML use cases diagram is to show what actors can do in the system. Typically, what actors can do in the system represents functional requirements. Use cases diagram also helps people understand what is the actual business need behind the system, which business problem are we trying to solve. And by looking at UML use cases diagram, everybody on the project team will be able to see how system actually solves the problem. Comprehensive use cases diagram shows all available options and all available use cases in the system, and typically used in all phases of software development lifecycle. To reflect the use cases actor is performing, you use use cases shape. When building the diagram, you can either copy and paste use case shape, or you can bring in new shapes every time. You can use cool features of Microsoft Visio to align the shapes and distribute them vertically. To do that, you need to select all the shapes. You can do it by holding the Shift button and then align left. So now all the shapes are aligned. To distribute them equally, you click on the position and you say distribute vertically. And now the distance between the shapes is the same vertically. Once we have all the shapes selected, we can drag them to make it more centered within the subsystem box. Now let's define relationships between actors and use cases. To do that, we can use association shape. We bring in association, connect it to one of the actors, and then connect it to the shape. For example, new customer needs to sign up before being able to use the system and do a checkout. At the same time, new customer should be able to view items without signing up. Previously registered customer should be able to also search and view items. And registered customers also should be able to make purchases. I personally don't like when lines on the diagram intersect. To avoid this, we can move make purchases above the search and view. To better understand the sequence of activities happening at online store, we will use the hierarchy you can see on this picture. UML, by the way, provides an exceptional diagram type for this, activity diagram. So make sure to search for my other video on this topic. But in use case diagram, let's see how new customer progresses from being new customer to the checkout. Even though new customer can search and browse items on the online shopping store, we expect new customer to sign up before new customer can make purchases. So from the standpoint of use case diagram, make purchases use case includes search and view items use case as well as a checkout use case. Let's show this relationship in the diagram. To do that, we can bring in include shape and connect two use cases using include shape. Now you can see that the diagram depicts that make purchases use case includes search and view use case. Let's establish the same relationship between make purchases and checkout. To avoid crossing the lines, I'm going to bring checkout use case closer to make purchases use case, and I'm going to expand subsystem shape. And now we can add relationship between make purchases use case and checkout use case. I would recommend you do a couple other things to make diagram look more professional. I would add a title box, and I can do it by bringing in a text box right here in the diagram. We can also look at the colors to make them better matching. Right now we have blue, green, red, and black. They look okay, but not very professional. Visio design features provide us with the opportunity to quickly fix it. We have multiple themes here, and we can try to pick one of the themes. This looks a little bit better, but we can try other themes as well. Once you pick the theme, you can pick variants. Variants allow you to change the colors, but keep the theme. Let's say that I like this theme, but I'm not happy with the colors. I would like to make actors with the red matching the logo, instead of having actors in the pinkish color. To do that, you need to select each actor individually, and on the Home tab, select Fill button. And you can pick the color that would be as close as you can see based on the colors available. It is hard to match it exactly because it's still different, so I'm probably gonna stick with the black color, because black is pretty much the same. To do that, I can select Fill and click the black. I can change the color of the font the same way. All I need to do is select the font and click on the font color. Now I can replicate this format to other shapes. To do that, I need to select the shape, click Format Painter, and replicate it to other shapes. We can also change the title and color of the subsystem shape into black. To do that, let's select subsystem shape first and click Line to be black, as well as the text to be black as well. To change the color of the title, you select the title and choose the font to be black. Obviously, my design skills are pretty amateur, but you can use your own design talents to pick the right colors. Since we had to rearrange the shapes, we can arrange them again to look more professional. To do that, let's select the shape, and you see that Microsoft Visio provides some guides that allow us to place the shape correctly. We can place this shape in the middle, in between Make Purchases and Sign Up, and we can have Checkout somewhere on the side, maybe in between Make Purchases and Search View. And another idea that just came to my mind is making the title bold to make it more vivid. If you like the diagram, make sure to download the sample using the description of this video. This will allow you to jumpstart your own UML use case diagram. The best way to jumpstart on UML class diagram is to use provided template. If you search for available templates, Microsoft Visio provides 2 templates for UML class diagrams. One is just simple UML class template, and second one is UML class with interfaces. Depending what you're trying to build, you can choose either available template. To start building class diagram, all you need to do is to bring the stencil and start populating the members of the class. So what is UML class diagram and why do we need it? UML class diagram is intended to provide a blueprint for entire system design. This blueprint works very well regardless of which programming language you use to build your system. And the reason it works so extremely well is because UML class diagram shows what types of objects you will be building. It shows objects' properties and methods, as well as static relationships between objects. To start editing class in Microsoft Visio, all you need to do is click on the class name. In this video, we will be building UML class diagram for online e-commerce store. Let's look at the typical classes we might need for this type of diagram. There is minimum of 2 classes we might need. First one is customer. Customer typically has name, address, phone. We also would like to capture search history of the customer, as well as allow customer to place the order. I would like to pinpoint couple considerations for the customer class. Customer always has name, address, and phone, and typically this is a single one-to-one relationship between customer and these types of attributes. Search history done by the customer on online e-commerce website typically represents multiple items. I highlighted first 4 items on the list as blue, indicating that they are the attributes of the class, versus placing order, which is something that is done by the customer as an action. This leads us to very important consideration, as each class can contain properties which represent data attributes of the class, as well as methods which represent behaviors of what class can do. Both properties and methods are members of the class, but you use above-the-line area in the class to show properties, and you use below-the-line area in the class to show methods. For example, to add customer name as an attribute, you just double-click on the member name and type in name and then define what type of attribute it is going to be. In our case, it is string. Then you hit enter. To insert address, we would need additional space above the line. To get it, we need to right-mouse click on the name, which is an existing attribute, and say we're trying to insert member after. Once the placeholder for the new attribute was added, we can just edit it and add address as another attribute. Because search history can contain more than one item, we will come back to define the type of data attribute that the search history will represent. Methods for the class defined in very similar way. All you need to do is to double-click on the existing method and type in the actual name for the method. If you need to add additional methods, you can right-click and say Insert Member After. To define e-commerce order class, we need to bring in the new class object and define properties and methods for the class. Couple important considerations here. Based on the limitations of programming languages, there cannot be any spaces in between the words of the attribute name or method name. So you see there are no spaces in between search history and place order. Another important consideration, class doesn't have to have both properties and methods. It can only contain properties, like in case of order. So if we don't have any methods, we can just remove this element. In addition to defining properties and methods, UML class diagram also helps you define relationships between classes. There are many types of relationships you can define in 2 main categories. First, you need to define plurality between objects. In this category, you define if the relationship is one-to-one or one-to-many. In general relationship category, you have at least 5 things to consider. For example, there is an association type relationship between customer and order. One customer can place many orders. To depict it on the diagram, you need to bring an association stencil and connect it between 2 objects. We can select the object and align them to make sure this is a straight line. The actual name of one-to-many relationship in UML is multiplicity relationship. By default, association line does not show multiplicity. To enable multiplicity, you need to select the line, do a right mouse click, and select Show Multiplicity. Typically, you show multiplicity by showing 1 next to the customer and showing many next to the order, and then deleting items that you don't need. Currently, this line shows association type relationship between customer and orders, and also shows one-to-many relationship between customer and order, because one customer can submit multiple orders. Generalization or inheritance relationship typically shows us is a relationship between child class and the parent class. Typically, this type of relationship is ideal to show reusable elements in the class diagram, because it shows that the child class inherits the common functionality defined in the parent class. For example, in the real world, there might be at least 2 types of customers: business customer and individual consumer customer. Both of these types of customers might inherit all the attributes and methods from the generic customer object. And in addition to this, they might have their own properties and methods specific to their function. For example, business customers may be approved to buy with purchase orders, and this is why it's important to have credit limits for business customers. They can also place their orders on credit, versus consumers who only are able to place orders using credit card. To show generalization type relationship in the class diagram, we need to use generalization stencil. Once we bring it into the picture, we can connect it to the objects and make sure the relationship is established. Once we've established relationship for one object, we can copy and paste the relationship stencil, or we can bring in the new one. Aggregation type relationship is created when one class is formed as a collection of other classes. For example, to represent search history for the customer, you might consider creating a dedicated class. It will be connected with the customer class through the search history ID, and it will contain the collection of the searched items. You might also have at least 2 methods if customer was looking for the particular item. To represent aggregation type relationship in the class diagram, you need to use aggregation stencil. Once you bring it to the diagram, you can connect it to the right object. You can also select the object and use keyboard arrow keys to move the object to get to the straight line in your connection. Composition relationship is a variation of aggregation relationship. Composition typically illustrates that a strong life cycle is present between the classes. Relationship between customer and search history items could be represented either by aggregation or by composition. If you feel that composition should be used, you can either bring in a new stencil, or you can just right mouse click on the existing relationship and change the connector type. You can do it by selecting a composition type relationship instead of aggregation. Realization relationship is typically used when one entity, typically an interface, defines a set of functionalities as a contract for another entity, which is typically just a regular class. In this relationship, class typically realizes the contract by implementing all the functionalities defined in the interface. For example, we might define an interface that will be called order processor. This interface will have 2 methods: validate payment and validate items availability. We might also consider defining 2 classes that will realize this interface: business order processor and consumer order processor. Business order processor class will realize all the methods of the interface and implement them, as well as it will implement one additional business order specific methods, which is validate credit limit. Very similar situation we will do with consumer order processor. Consumer order processor will realize all the methods and implement all of them for order processor interface, as well as consumer specific method, which is validate credit card. To show realization relationship between classes and interface, we can use realization stencil. Once you bring it into the diagram, you can connect it to the relevant objects. Microsoft Visio provides excellent features to make your diagram look professional. For example, you can add your logo into the diagram and place it in any corner where you would like. You can also use align features of Visio to align the objects on the diagram. For example, the relationship between interfaces and classes doesn't look very straight. So we can zoom in into this area, we can move interface a little bit up, and then we can look at the lines to see how can we align these lines. And the best way to align the lines might be to align the objects themselves. To do that, we can select the objects, click Align, and we can align middle. And you see by aligning the objects, it aligned the lines as well. We can also use design features of Microsoft Visio to make the diagram look very professional. To do that, let's navigate to the Design tab on the ribbon, and then there are a lot of different themes available. All you need to do is switch between the themes to see which one fits what you're trying to accomplish the best. For example, I like this theme. It's called Linear. I'm going to select it. I can also select different variants that are available for this theme, which will bring in different variants for the given theme. You can also choose different colors within the variant. For example, if you like the variant, if you'd like how it looks, you can just play with the colors. You can also change the background for the diagram. You can either choose one of the available backgrounds that matches the theme, or you can bring in your own image that you think might be a good fit. Once you're done with the design, you can save diagram as PDF file. This is only one of the available options, and it allows you to distribute the diagram for many people that may not have Visio. Once you save it as PDF, Visio automatically brings up the Adobe PDF viewer and allow you to preview the diagram. And if you're using Microsoft Teams to collaborate with other people on your project, you can bring in Visio file by navigating to the Files tab in your channel, uploading the SDX file, and once file is in place, you can show the file as a separate tab if this information is important for every team member. To do that, you just need to click the plus button, select Microsoft Visio app, and pick the file. Now this file is available for everybody to view. The best way to create UML sequence diagram is to find available template. To do that, you need to search for UML sequence, and it will bring in multiple results. Both of them have been built by Microsoft, and most likely they will both work just fine for you. Couple things to consider here. Some of the diagram templates contain examples already. It's good to see how the sequence diagram may look like, and you can preview this by clicking on the template and see the sample from the template. When you create new Visio diagram that has a sample, you see sample on the top and sequence of steps that might be helpful for you at the bottom. If you need to do sequence diagram with loop, you may consider using this sample. This sample shows you actor and two objects, as well as the interaction loop. And the last sample provided by Microsoft is even more sophisticated. It shows you interaction frame with multiple conditions. I will not be using any pre-built samples, and I will just start from scratch. Once you create new Visio diagram using the template, you see multiple stencils available for UML sequence diagram. This set of stencils is everything that you need to create an effective sequence diagram to represent your system. So what is UML sequence diagram? Sequence diagram is designed to represent how entities in the system interact and collaborate. In the example of online e-commerce store, when customer comes to the website, customer can search the system, and system will return back the items that match searching criteria. The interactions between the customer and the store is shown by two lines. The first is the search line, customer sending a message to the store. And second is the line coming back from e-commerce store back to the customer. The big importance of sequence diagram is that it shows the sequence. And this is extremely important because sequence diagram is one of the few diagrams that shows and focuses on dynamic interactions between the entities. Sequence diagram also can represent optional events or conditional events. The example of optional event might be customer logging into the system. Logging into the system is not represented in this diagram, but maybe it should be. A lot of times, e-commerce websites retain your login information in the form of cookies, and next time you come to visit, you're already logged in. Example of conditional interaction is shown in this frame. When customer needs to check out, they need to have an account in the system. If they're a new customer, they can create an account, but if they are an existing customer, they need to log in. The biggest power of sequence diagram is that it shows step-by-step interactions and focus on the order of interactions and shows them visually. To start building sequence diagram, you just bring in entities from available list of stencils in the stencil box. The first entity would be a customer. Once you have entity in place, you can assign name to the entity by double-clicking on the box. You see the font here is a little bit bigger, so we can select it and reduce the font size. We will have two other entities in this diagram: e-commerce store and payment gateway. Couple important considerations here. When I bring an entity, Visio shows grid lines. It allows you to place entities on the same level with other entities. It also shows you the distance between the entities, so you can place entities at the same distance. For the purposes of e-commerce diagram, customer is also called an actor, and e-commerce store and payment gateway would be called objects. Interactions between customer, e-commerce store, and payment gateway would be defined using messages. And messages could be primary message, return message, or self-message. To define a message, we use message stencil. We just drag it and place it right on the lifeline, and then we extend it to the next object. The first thing that customers do when they come to the e-commerce store, they search for particular item. Once you have message in place, you can double-click on the message and type in the activity. One thing you might consider changing right away is the color of the message, because green typically doesn't match well with blue and red. So I'm going to change it to black. To do that, you select the message and then select the fill and then click on the line to make sure you select the black color. To change the color of the text, you need to have the message selected and click on the font and select color for the font. Once customer submits the search for items they're looking for, e-commerce engine returns back the list of items that match search criteria. To represent the return message, we can bring in the new message stencil, or we can copy and paste an existing stencil. Copying existing stencil might be more beneficial because we already have styles that we defined by changing the colors. To copy stencil, all you need to do is just select it and do copy, and then just do paste. And then because this is a return message, all we need to do is to change the direction for the message. And then the last step is to assign what this message is going to be doing. We keep adding more messages as we continue defining the interactions. You can also use keyboard shortcuts like Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V to copy the messages. And now, because we have messages going in both directions, you can copy the matching message with the matching direction. Once customer reviews the items available based on the search criteria, they can add items to the cart. An e-commerce store can display items in the cart. Once all items have been added, customer can start the checkout process. At this point, they will be presented with account screen, where they can choose either to sign up with the new account or log in with the existing account. Because creation of the new account versus logging in with existing account is the condition, we would need an alternative block to represent this condition on the sequence diagram. To represent this condition on the diagram, we bring an alternative fragment right into the diagram. It shows alt for the alternative condition, and it shows condition 1 and condition 2. After you change the colors to adjust better to other colors in the diagram, you might end up with the block like this, which will have two conditions: for registered customers that would be required to log in, or for the new customers that would be required to sign up. And you can represent alternative actions with login message or create new account message accordingly. As our diagram continues to grow, we need longer lifeline messages here. You extend lifeline by selecting it and just dragging the end of it until you're satisfied with the new length. And we will continue with the customer checkout flow. Assuming that as part of the new account registration process, customer will enter the address, the next step would be for customer to enter the payment options. At this point, customer should be able to enter payment method. Once customer entered payment method, it needs to be validated with the payment gateway, which is another object in our diagram, and so far this object didn't get any actions and didn't receive any messages. After customer entered payment method, e-commerce store will send the message to payment gateway to validate payment method. And at this point, we come to another alternative condition, because payment method could be either accepted or rejected by payment gateway. If payment was accepted, payment gateway will issue payment confirmation. E-commerce store will be the first one to receive this payment confirmation. And e-commerce store would need to communicate the payment confirmation back to the customer. Successful payment confirmation typically indicates successful order confirmation, because typically it indicates valid entry of the credit card information. As alternative condition, payment method could be rejected. There are multiple reasons why payment might be rejected, but one of them might be that the payment method is not valid. And in case entered payment method is not valid, e-commerce store would need to prompt customer to re-enter payment information. Why mind map is so effective? There are 5 main reasons. It is the best tool available today to learn material fast. Mind mapping allows you to quickly understand important concepts, connect information you're learning to existing knowledge you already have, build associations with existing topics you already know, and recall material that you're learning much faster. You can use mind maps to help you study at school, college, or university. Mind maps will help you brainstorm new ideas, solve problems effectively. Mind mapping will help you with the effective decision-making, event planning. It will help you make your meetings more effective. And what's extremely important in today's world, it will help you effectively collaborate remotely. The fastest way to create mind mapping diagram in Visio is to search for available template. Once you are in the drawing screen, mind mapping diagram, which is also called brainstorming diagram, has 5 shapes in Visio: main topic, topic, multiple topics, dynamic connector, and association line. To start building the diagram, you need to start with the main topic. Let's say that my main topic I'm trying to brainstorm is how to learn effectively. To capture it in the main topic bubble, I need to double-click on the bubble and type in the name. Let's assume that there are 5 main concepts we're trying to adopt for effective learning: taking notes, connecting new concepts to existing knowledge, asking questions if something is not clear, visualizing concepts, and reviewing the examples. Let's represent these 5 concepts on the diagram. To add subtopic to the main topic, you need to click on the shape and click Add Subtopic. Once in place, you need to double-click on the subtopic and type the new text. You can add additional 4 subtopics in the same way. Let's take a look at a couple things Microsoft Visio provides to make your diagram effective. Number 1 is outline window. Here you see that we have main topic and we have 5 subtopics. You can edit things right here, or you can get to the specific subtopic. By default, if you add subtopics through the right mouse click, they are added on the left side and on the right side from the main bubble. It might be okay for you. If you need to change this behavior, keep in mind that you can reconnect the subtopic to any areas of existing bubble. Keep in mind that mind map is just a concept. It doesn't matter which tool do you use. I use Microsoft Visio because it's just much easier for me to present it on the screen. But in addition to digital options, you might very well be using chalkboard or pen and paper. It is very important that you focus on the ideas and the concepts and the thought process of what you're trying to document, not on the tool. Couple considerations though to keep in mind. Always plan for revisions. It is good to use the tool where you can erase and edit the information. And another important thing is that mind map can be used as a comprehension tool for yourself. You don't need anybody else to build effective mind map. And at the same time, it could be used as very effective collaboration tool when you're working with the team. There are a couple cool options available to change the design of the diagram without changing the functionality. Because we're using brainstorming template, Microsoft Visio added brainstorming tab, and there are multiple options in this tab. In addition to adding topics or rearranging items on the screen automatically, you have an option of changing the diagram style. When you click on the diagram style button, you can switch between different styles that are available. For example, I might like elliptical style. Let's see how it's going to look. I think I'm okay with this, so I'm going to click OK. One other cool option that I use a lot, outline window, you can enable it here or disable it here. In an outline window, you can see the entire structure of the diagram by just expanding and going through the tree. After changing the design, some of the text no longer fits into the box. So what you can do, you can either expand the box, or in my case, I'd like to keep the boxes the same. Or in this case, it's not boxes, it's ovals. I'm typically just changing the length of the text and reducing the text. For example, instead of connect to existing knowledge, I'll just leave existing knowledge. And here, instead of visualize concept, I can maybe have it on a different line if I really want to keep both, or I can just leave the word visualize. Other features that might help you improve appeal of the diagram are available in the Design tab. Here you have multiple themes, and you can go through the themes and see how your diagram will look with the different theme. Let's say that you picked the theme, and now you have access to variants. Variants will keep all elements of the theme, but will allow just to change the colors. You can also change the background of the diagram by picking particular background that you might like, or uploading your own image for the background. I'm going to do undo and leave the background white, because it's easier to see on the screen. And last but not least is adding some borders and titles. If you're doing a formal diagram, maybe for your project, or trying to do additional information, maybe like copyright or something else on your diagram, good idea might be to introduce the border, pick the color that match, in this case colors do not match, and then include the date information, include title of the diagram, include author, and include copyright. I'm going to undo this step as well and show you one last feature that you can take advantage of, which is re-layout of the diagram. Visio allows you to automatically change the layouts based on the different styles, so you can pick something that best matches your needs. One of the main reasons mind mapping diagram is so effective is because it comes natively to our brain. The way neurons fire in our brain matches precisely how things are built in a mind mapping diagram. Even though our brain contains 100 billion neurons and support cells, it works best to create and connect ideas and thoughts and not to store them. Similar to the way items represented in the mind mapping diagram, our brain activates and fires neurons to connect the ideas and recall the information. For example, when you start thinking, how can I learn more effectively, you might recall the fragment from this video which would say that one of the ways to do it is use an existing knowledge. Then you would ask yourself a question: how would I connect new information to something that I already know? And your answer might be, maybe I should research the topic, maybe I should pre-read something before the meeting or before the lecture, or maybe I can do Google search to learn more so I can easily connect information to what I already know. Have you ever wondered how somebody could memorize the deck of cards, specifically the order of the cards in the deck, and then recall it one by one by one by one? Let me open you the biggest secret of all. These people do not have any special abilities. They do not have a bigger brain, and you can do it also. The most popular way to memorize something and recall it on demand when you need it is to connect the information to something you already know. One of the most popular techniques these people use is called house walk. And guess what? It looks precisely as a mind map diagram. This is how it works. Everybody lives somewhere, and wherever you live, you might have house entrance, living room, family room, or bedroom, or some variations of those. First, you build a path of how you're going to walk through the house. You enter through the entrance, then you go to the living room, then you go to the family room, and then you go to the bedroom. Let's say that you're trying to memorize 6 of diamonds and associate it with the front entrance. To build strong association, it has to be something unusual and something very weird. Something that doesn't exist in the real world. This way our brain will remember it. For example, can you imagine your entire front door as 6 of diamonds, with the door handle right where it should be? Or can you imagine the door with 6 diamond rings hanging right in front of you? The more weird and the more unusual it is, the better chances you have for your brain to remember it. Going back to our original example, the people that can memorize hundreds of cards or hundreds of names do not have any special abilities. All of this is the trained ability. They just trained themselves to create better associations, to better connect the new information to something that they already know. And through repetition, they achieved mastery here and can surprise millions of people that maybe don't practice this every day. Same way they use the simple techniques to accomplish extraordinary results, you can use mind maps to accomplish your goals. There are unlimited examples of where you can use mind maps, but some of the most common ones are you can use it to study, to learn more effectively, to brainstorm new ideas, to solve problems, to help with your decision-making process, to do event planning, to make meetings more effective, and to collaborate remotely. One of the coolest things about mind map is that you can keep expanding the levels of it until you find all the answers or come to the solutions. For example, when you were doing initial brainstorming, you might have come up with 5 different ideas of how to learn more effectively as a student. You can take notes, you connect new information to existing knowledge, you can ask questions, you can visualize concepts, you can review and process the examples. Let's look at how can we take this information to the next level. For example, to take more effective notes, you can use OneNote application, and you can also review your notes more regularly. You can also do a couple things to connect new knowledge to something you already know. For example, you can research the topic before the lecture. You can also pre-read the book chapter, and you can also do online Google search on the topic. What's interesting is that online Google search and pre-reading of the book chapter could be variations of the research topic before lecture. It doesn't matter where you put them, as long as you capture the idea on the mind map and also follow the process. You can also improve your learning by asking additional questions. For example, you can collaborate with other students, or you can join the professor or teaching assistant with your questions during their office hours. Another way to learn effectively is to visualize the concepts that you're studying. You can do it better by adding pictures and diagrams right into your note. Another idea might be for you to become a tutor and explain the concept and topic to somebody else, and draw the pictures and diagrams for these people to help them understand what's going on. And last but not least way of improving your knowledge is constantly looking for the examples. For example, what I like to do, I constantly ask myself question, how is this useful? Can it be used in my life? How other people are using this knowledge? Can I learn something from them? And what are the practical examples of implementing this concept as something useful in the real world? We did 2 levels of mind mapping in this diagram from the main topic. Do you know any other ways how it could be improved and extended? Could you please share your comments and thoughts in the comment section of this video? Please consider subscribing to this channel. Skills that you learn here will be helpful for you now and also in the future. You also get opportunity to help other people by answering their questions and helping them solve their challenges. If you like the content, please give this video a big thumbs up. This tells us that you need more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.